You want answers?
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended the Shaolin Temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
All right, my apologies for the folks hoping to tune in to see Dwayne Sessom from Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. We were unable to get him on the phone, so we will try to reschedule him for a future edition of our Cops Say Legalized Drugs segment, because, boy, I'm sure he's got plenty of good stuff to say, being a former deputy sheriff in Oklahoma. In the meantime, I figured I'd pull out a radical rant, an article I've just written for the National Cannabis Coalition, and I hope you enjoy it. This is called PolitiFact Says Marijuana is Less Toxic Than Alcohol is Mostly True. Mostly? The Marijuana Policy Project ran an advertisement that claimed marijuana is less toxic than alcohol. The political watchdog group PolitiFact then took it upon themselves to adjudicate the truthfulness of the claim. They determined the claim is mostly true. Mostly? How can a claim that purports a mathematical inequality and a medically measurable effect be mostly true? 3 is less than 5 is not mostly true. It is true. Marijuana is less toxic than alcohol is just plain true. But to judge the claim, PolitiFact looked at mortality data from the use of alcohol and marijuana. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, also known as the CDC, there were over 41,000 deaths attributed to alcohol in 2010. Almost 16,000 of those deaths were from alcoholic liver disease alone, and the other 25,000 plus did not include accidents and homicides attributable to alcohol. The CDC's figures for marijuana? There aren't any. No reports of marijuana listed as a cause of death. Well, that seems pretty simple then, doesn't it? Alcohol can kill you, marijuana cannot. Therefore, marijuana is less toxic than alcohol. Not so fast, logical thinking, common sense using listener. In a masterful turn of Clintonian parsing, the critics of the claim say it all depends on what the meaning of the word toxic is. This is from the PolitiFact story. For starters, the term toxic can be vague. Dr. Cynthia Lewis Younger, medical director of the Florida Poison Information Center in Tampa, said toxic can be, quote, anything that causes harm. It is possible to drink enough water to poison yourself. It's more related to the dose than anything else, end quote. That's an interesting definition of toxic. Anything that causes harm? Well, my first Google of toxic got me poisonous. And clicking on that got me of a substance or plant causing or capable of causing death or illness if taken into the body. Merriam-Webster's dictionary says, containing or being poisonous material, especially when capable of causing death or serious debilitation. Now, indeed, too much water can kill you, but not because water is poisonous, rather because it causes hyponatremia. Basically, your kidneys don't have enough time to filter out the water, so the water gets sent into your blood. You basically have waterlogged blood. That water continues on to the cells in your body, and as far as the fat cells and the muscle cells go, they can absorb more water. They got room to expand, but once it gets into your brain, there's not enough room to expand in the solid skull there, and you get what's called brain edema, or a swelling of the brain that can cause paranoia, psychosis, hallucinations, and even death. So it's not like you're being poisoned, it's more like you're overloading your kidneys. Now, the National Institutes on Drug Abuse also chimed in on this with this absurd statement. NIDA states in an email that the effect of marijuana can depend on the person, their biology, who's using it, the amount, and under what circumstances. Quote, claiming that marijuana is less toxic than alcohol cannot be substantiated, since each possesses their own unique set of risks and consequences for a given individual, end quote, according to an agency email statement. Risks and consequences? The claim is marijuana is less toxic than alcohol, and NIDA wants to stretch the definition of toxic to the risks and consequences you may suffer from the use of marijuana? Well, shit, by that definition, unprotected sex, gambling, and joining the army are toxic. But don't let that distract you. Focus on that part that Dr. Lewis Younger said about toxic being related to the dose. Because later in that PolitiFact piece, they note the study of Dr. William Gable, who compared the relative toxicity of 20 substances using a little something called science. He calculated the effective dose, which means how much it takes to get you high, to the lethal dose, which is how much it takes to overdose and die, for each drug. Now, it is true, your biology can matter, your figures can be a little bit different. I mean, I can probably outdrink Kristen Chenoweth, for instance, but that's because she's a 4'11" petite woman and I'm a 6 foot overweight man. So to deal with that, the variances in all the different people using drugs, Dr. Gable collected lots of data and quantified those figures as ED50 and LD50, which meant how much effective dose and lethal dose would work on at least 50% of the test subjects. For each substance, Dr. Gable then came up with what's called a therapeutic ratio, the comparison of ED50 to LD50. The larger the ratio, the more toxic the drug. For example, intravenous heroin use was his most toxic drug, coming in at a 1-to-5 ratio, which means 1 hit gets you high, 5 hits kills you. Now, surprisingly, nutmeg, yes, the common spice nutmeg, has a 1-to-7 ratio. And you might not have even known that nutmeg can get you high, since the government never bothered to put it in the drug schedules. But seriously, folks, don't try to get high on nutmeg. It's not a pleasant trip, and it's very dangerous. Stick to the weed. Now, alcohol comes in at a 1-to-10 ratio. And of course, you can adjust this for the different users out there, right? Kristen Chenoweth may cop a buzz on 2 drinks, 20's going to kill her. I might cop a buzz on 4 drinks, 40's going to kill me. It's still 1-to-10 no matter how you slice it. Marijuana? That doesn't even really have a ratio. Gable's chart puts it at 1 to greater than 1,000 plus. 1 joint will get you high. It'll take over 1,000 to kill you. Now, well, since he couldn't really find any recorded deaths from marijuana, he couldn't even really give it a number. I mean, that's math 101. You cannot divide by 0. With such stark scientific data making the case that marijuana is indeed less toxic than alcohol, and with drug war opponents stretching the definition of toxic so broadly, we can say when it comes to marijuana, PolitiFact is mostly believable. All right, so that's the radical rant, and let's see, we'll take a quick little break here, and when we come back, I might have a little extra radical rant for you.